I sponsored Aspen Connect because I so believe in the importance of this conversation. You need to know what's going on, and you need to know that there are resources out there to help you. I was confronted with a life-changing decision. Our family was happy. We started noticing really gradually that he started pulling away a little bit. Things started changing. And then things really took a shift, and it went from just a gradual decline to spiraling out of control. I had seen on his phone that yet again he was buying drugs. That was his way of dealing with his anxiety and depression, substance abuse. And I went to confront him with it with tears streaming down my face and said to him, "We have no other choice. We're gonna have to send you away." And he looked right through me as if I wasn't there. And he screamed and said awful things. But it was in that moment when he was telling me he would never speak to me again that I knew I had no other choice. The day he left, although I felt a momentarily sense of joy that I was saving his life, I almost immediately went dark. When you're so worried about your kid, all you can think about is taking care of them. And so what you stop taking care of is yourself. Until one day I woke up and I knew things had to change. And I walked outside and the sun was shining, and I started eating better, started exercising again, and I started living my life. After he finished his therapeutic boarding school, Eli came home. He slowly started transitioning back to life in his own way. The difference now was he had the self-awareness and self-compassion to know when he needed help and know what he needed as help. Parents, friends of friends started calling me for advice because of everything that we had gone through, and also because of my background as a holistic wellness coach. And that's when I decided that I wanted to open along their way a coactive mentoring program. We support families who have a child who's struggling in crisis or in treatment. Through the coactive mentoring model, I really try to support the whole self, mind, body, and spirit. If you're a teen, young adult, or parent out there who's struggling or concerned, please reach out. I offer a 30-minute free consultation. Don't hesitate. It's not about getting rid of your anxiety or depression. It's about learning the coping skills so that when those feelings arise, you know what to do.
Thank you. First, I want to thank Jillian for putting this first-rate forum together to support teens. We need more conversations like this because I really think it's going to take all of us to find a solution to what's going on with our teens today. The title of this panel is How Do We Change Entrenched Social Norms and Help Our Youth Thrive? And that's a pretty lofty panel discussion, but I think we can make a little stab at it. I wanted to read a statistic that I found today that overwhelmed me a little bit, and it just speaks to the rising issue that we have. We are in a crisis. SAMHSA, which is basically our mental health governmental organization, has a statistic that says by 2020, mental health and substance use disorders will surpass all physical diseases as a major cause of disability worldwide. So something is happening where so many are turning to substances to cope, and our mental well-being is failing. Interestingly, mood swings are common in adolescent years, But today, 1 in 5 adolescents has a diagnosable mental disorder such as depression or anxiety, also put out by the government. 30% of teens with depression will develop an addiction. But the most important thing is treatment for adolescent and teen mental health disorders can improve. They can get well if action is taken when the symptoms appear. And I think that is really key, and I think that's what we're all aiming at for today. Sonja, thanks for your presentation. I loved the comment that you said, if we all stand together, that's how we're going to heal. Can you speak a little bit more to that?
I think when we look at wellness for our youth especially, there are 4 pillars. Ourselves, like really being conscious and aware of our own regulating skills. Our families, who will be challenged to step forward and ask hard questions about our own norming and what we do and what we model. Our schools and how we can all work together to make this a priority and make mental health a priority. And then the communities. So those 4, if we're together and working on the same language, the same expectations, the same approach to wellness and giving the same message, we have a fighting chance. So it's important that we're collaborating.
Great. So if we know that, how do families find the resources? So what if a family realizes they need help? Katherine, can you explain a little bit about Aspen Family Connection? Sorry. What's the process for families who come to seek help at Aspen Family Connections?
They give us a call. They come to an event, or they phone us, and they come to us, or they come to us through referrals through schools, or through any of our partners, through Mindsprings Health, through Response, through our friends in law enforcement. We work, Bruce said it very well, there's a lot of collaboration in this valley, and that's what Aspen Family Connections is a product of that, but also is there to kind of maximize it. But I feel like, we're sort of, I don't want to say we're missing something, but there's something that I think is very important, is Aspen Family Connections. We're not here to fix kids, because we never see kids, we always see families. And it begins and ends with the family, and I don't think you fix a community, and I don't think you can fix social norms, and you certainly can't help kids unless you help the whole family. And I think that's the principle, that's how we work, is that we gather the family, and then we gather a team around the family, and that could be all kinds of people. They're natural supports, I think, are very important. They're providers, their schools, their communities. As Sonja says, we create that team around them, and then we go out and find the resources that they need. And we're very lucky because we live in a place where we have a lot. We have there are huge support networks, and but people find it hard to find them, number one, and number two, families are struggling, and I'm not talking about, there's no one family, right? Just as there's no map of a person, there's no map of a family. So what we do is we look at the family, we look at their strengths, we look at their challenges, and we help them to set goals for themselves and improve their lives in all the ways that have been talked about today.
So it sounds like you are a major connector in finding for each individual family what it is they need. So that's great. So that's a terrific resource.
But a lot of what we do, I think, is also we want to highlight the importance of prevention. We want to talk to families when their children are in utero. And that's what we're working towards, is that we begin understanding how we're going to operate as families and how we're going to create the preconditions and the protective factors and the skills and the resources that are going to give us the family life that really, frankly, everybody dreams about. Nobody sits around and sort of imagines problems for themselves, and we want to be as upstream as possible of all of that.
Great. Lance, what are some of the key issues you see affecting teens today at Mindsprings Health? And what do you think we can do as a community to help relieve the anxiety that teens are feeling?
Well, I like what the young man said before, the losing connections with your family. I think it's real easy, obviously, or not really easy, but sometimes coming into therapy, doing some of the things that you need to, but the difficult things that you're doing within the family system. Parents that are working all day until 5:30 or 6 o'clock sometimes don't get to sit down for dinner with their kids, don't get to sit down for a TV show with their kids. It's very hard to raise a family these days, and so, not only at Mind Springs and just myself as a therapist, I really encourage those foundational, somewhat easy things. Are we sitting down maybe, and I know TV, you're maybe sometimes trying to keep kids away from TV, but how many times are you sitting down with them, getting part of a show, cooking dinner together, trying to get cooking meals on Sundays, getting them ready for a busy Wednesday night so you can sit down for 30 minutes and talk. Because I think we can see the signs when kids and adolescents are pulling away and there's less connectivity, but are we creating the space to be able to talk about it, to just sit at the table and just talk about the day? Because 60% of those days might just be regular days, but that one time when I need to talk to my parent, I need them to be there. Our parents taking the time and making the family more important than the work as best they can in some of those struggles. But I think some of those foundation pieces, where a lot of therapists won't tell you, sitting down and just having dinner every night, being consistent, playing video games with your kid rather than tell them to get off the video game, taking walks with them, going out and having fun. Those indirect things are getting ready for when those problems are coming or when growth and when friends are coming in. You can't really control the whole world around your kids, but you can control what you do in your home and how you build into it. And so I think that's, therapists at Mind Springs, we try to bring families in, not just treat the child, treat the whole family, and really give them skills. Therapy's 10% of it. 90% is what you're doing in your home and your hard work you're doing to work as a team together. So I would say that's some of the most important.
That's great. Cam, I haven't seen you since you were at Youth Zone, so it's great to see you in your, well, probably old but new to me role. You've been involved with youth for quite a while, and have a pretty good pulse on what's going on now in your new role. What are you seeing with children today, and what are you seeing the role of parents in that? I mean, are you seeing a correlation? I know this is kind of,
That's an easy one.
Okay, could you speak to that?
Get it right?
I guess it's unique to every family working with, when we work with youth. So a key part of that job for me was sitting down with the family and the kids for a couple hours and just kind of filtering through what maybe is going on, because it is unique. Like I grew up here and I had a hardworking mom who, I didn't go without, but she was a single mom, and so the one thing I did have is a lot of free time, which didn't really end up working well in my favor. But I'm here now, and I have a badge on my chest, and it all turned out, right? So, yeah, I think that's unique because we see sometimes socioeconomically we're impacted in different ways. Oftentimes with families that were struggling, it was sitting down and every meal was together. These kids never felt like they got to go out and live the life that the other kids did. And then some of the more well-off, I remember kids being like, I don't remember the last time we ate at home. We always eat at restaurants and all these things. So what you could think, it's easy to look out and from the outside and kind of try to assess, oh, well, this is what's going on, and have some cookie cutter answer. I don't think it's that easy. So taking the time to sit down with someone, whether proactively, I encourage that, right? Because like everything, we tend to chase symptoms more than we do, whether it's obesity or whether it's whatever. We tend to chase symptoms instead of being proactive and being vulnerable enough to come in and be like, hey, listen, I don't really know what I'm doing here. I need help. And coming up and working with the resources that we have to come up with something that is unique to what your family needs are. Because there's not, I spent a lot of time this weekend trying to think like, what are the answers I can provide? And I kind of toss it out the window because of this exact reason, that there is no one answer, and it's about listening. No one wants to come in here tonight and hear me or anyone else tell them what they need to do. specifically or what they're not doing well. People want to be understood. And so if you're willing to be vulnerable enough to come in and share what those struggles are with someone who wants to help, these people want to help, I want to help, and then go from there. But it takes that initial building of a relationship with whatever resource that is. Some of it might be law enforcement, some of it could be something, we might go to the same house every week or so. It's important for us to have a relationship with that family. Maybe not with every teenager. Maybe some of that is something like Katherine or Youth Zone or wherever all these other agencies are. So I think it's unique, and it should be. There's no perfect answer for that question, but that's kind of what I saw.
That's great, thank you. Craig, working for the Aspen Hope Center and a school-based clinician in Basalt. So it sounds like we have a lot of resources that are available. And it also sounds like, as a parent and a community member, it involves us being willing to take the risk and be vulnerable and tell everyone what our problem is, what the truth is. And I think that's really hard for many, but that's where the healing's going to happen. So that might be one of the solutions, because mental illness and addiction, they're family diseases. It's well documented. And the only way we're going to change that dynamic is if we change the dynamic. And so some cog in that needs to change. But with that said, you know, we need a lot of resources for teens, and they need to know about them. What do you see, you know, out of all the toolbox that we have in the Valley, what's missing? What do our, in your mind, what's missing? What do our teens not have that they need?
Yeah, that's a really good question. You know, I think you first started off saying that it takes us talking about these issues, and I want to applaud and give recognition to the panel number one that came up here first. I mean, the ability to have courageous conversations and talk about difficult and uncomfortable things is difficult and uncomfortable. and these folks had the bravery to do that. And so it does start, you know, just having that conversation gives permission for other people to have that conversation. If there was something in the Valley, you know, sort of the toolbox, I would say, you know, a couple things come to mind. When I heard the first panel speak, I hear a lot of the things, you know, a lot of common threads in the students that I work with at the Hope Center and at the school. And so some of those common threads is sort of the social media. So the name of this is Changing Social Norms, and it could be changing social media norms. I remember, you know, maybe some of us up here too, and the parents out there, when we were kids, monitoring phone use used to be like the one phone line into the house, and who had the kitchen phone, you know, who was on the phone the longest. And that meant monitoring phone use. And nowadays, monitoring phone use and monitoring social media is so different. And it's not that being on social media is bad. It is that when our kids spend so much time on it, they're not spending so much time doing something else. And they're not exercising, they're not eating, they're not sleeping, they're not making real connections within their family. They're in the room, they're shut up in their room. They're missing out, and it's not their fault, but so it's those things that they're missing out on, and as parents and as adults, we're learning this too. This is a new world for us, because as parents, we're learning how to help our students, our kids manage social media, and we're managing it at the same time, and we have to be willing to discuss openly with our kids. How should we as a family manage social media and be able to follow through with our own recommendations and be role models for our own recommendations? Because if you're an adult sitting out there and you're like, I can't imagine what it would be like for me to say to my kid, give me that phone. You're not having that phone for this week. For a lot of parents, that'd be a nightmare. And it'd be a nightmare for us too. Like, what if someone took our phone for a week? So we need to be able to set reasonable limits based on discussions about what those limits should be, what's healthy for our family. And so I think, so one part of it is the social media, of course. And the other part is the conversations. A lot of times the connections was a common thread too. One of the most powerful moments for me as a therapist in high school is I often meet students for the first time when they're thinking about hurting themselves or they're at risk of suicide. And that point is a culmination of, there was a first time when that kid stopped going to eat with the family and locked themselves in the room. And there was a first time when that kid stopped eating well and stopped sleeping. And sort of this culmination effect is where this kid is now in my office saying, I want to kill myself. And all these things that the kids are not telling their families, like, I'm cutting myself, I'm having suicidal thoughts, I'm lonely, I'm anxious, I want more out of my relationship with my dad, my relationship with my mom isn't as what I want it to be. All these things that are not being talked about are sort of the cumulative effect of what happens when a kid is saying in my office, I can't deal with this. But the magic happens when the mom and the dad or the grandmother or whoever's there comes into my office. Hope Center clinicians come into my office, and all of a sudden, all that stuff comes out. And the risk of suicide, you can hear it drop.
Beautiful.
And that connection that's been missing, all those things that have been building up in those kids' head, they haven't been able to verbalize because they didn't know how, is pretty magical.
At A Way Out, we also work with family members, and we have found that was the key to the success of so many of our clients staying sober, that working with the whole family was such a huge piece. And I think that's just a theme in everything that everyone's talking about. Dr. Adams, you are on the front line at the ER at Valley View, and so you see a lot of youth with mental health issues, substance abuse, substance use disorder. Couple of things. I'd like to know what you're seeing, and if you feel like the problem is stabilizing, getting worse, or improving.
As an ER doctor, you guys come to me at the worst of your life, right? We're seeing all the kids that are either about to commit suicide or they have already tried to commit suicide. They're taking pills and they're finally telling someone, or someone kind of catch them already as an overdose. So I'm kind of like a little biased. So in my opinion, things are getting a lot worse. I don't go a shift, working a shift in the ER without seeing a kid that it's either there for anxiety, depression, substance abuse, or they're suicidal. So, and the other big issue that, we haven't touched a lot about is drinking and driving, right? We're seeing kids drinking younger and younger, and, you guys probably know, but, we're losing kids because of drinking and driving, and, I'm kind of dealing with they show up and they hurt, or they have just killed somebody, or they're about to die. So I feel like, if one message can be out there is, don't drink and drive. And a lot of times the alcohol is just a little gateway to other things. We're seeing, if we see a kid now that does not smoke marijuana, that's actually surprising. It's like, it's in every teen's life, and that's just one thing leads to the next. And what I try to always tell my patients is you kind of have to approach that as, addiction is a disease. It's a disease that you're going to deal with for the rest of your life. Alcoholism, it's what I tell my alcoholics, is like, you have to accept that once an alcoholic, you're always going to be an alcoholic, but it's up to you and your support network and the resources to keep you away from drinking. It's what they always say, right? You take one day at a time. And I feel like if we all approach addiction as a disease and take it seriously, as parents, as a teenager, we need to seek help. I kind of see people at the worst of the worst. We work very closely with Mind Springs, law enforcement, but we need to catch kids before they come to me, because I feel like a lot of times when they're already in the ER, it's almost too late.
Okay. So family sounds like it's the key piece here. Do any of you want to talk about ways that you feel we could engage families more and address this declining mental health that we're seeing in our young population?
That's a good one. All right. Well, no. I mean, I think there are lots of things we can do. And as I say, the family is a unit of strength. But within the family, we all have our issues, right? We all interlock, and we all have our issues. And very often we see families who are incredibly upset and worried about their children. They're not really taking care of themselves. And I think if I had one kind of magic wand, it would be that parents, and I'm a parent, I have 16-year-old twin boys actually, by the way, so you'll survive it, maybe. But we don't put ourselves first, right? We are so consumed with our kids' success, whatever it is, whether it's academic success or sporting success or who their friends are, but that we actually don't think about ourselves. And I think it would be a kindness and a gift to our families if we be prepared to ask for help, which, as you said, Liz, is the hardest thing to do, and seek support for our own issues, our own trauma, our own backgrounds, whatever we bring to the table. So I think the family is only as strong as its weakest member, right? So everybody needs to be taken care of, and that's the principle that we stick to, everybody, and that. It doesn't matter what your family looks like. It could be a conventional family. It could be, there's no recipe. There's absolutely no recipe. And for us at Aspen Family Connections, I also think it's really important. There's no judgment, right? We don't have like some picture of what a family is supposed to be, because many people, like you said, can't sit down for dinner at 6 o'clock. They've probably got 3 jobs, or there are any number of permutations. We all know that. There's no. And I think in this part of the valley, I'm going to say something maybe a bit controversial, there is a kind of a sense that everyone has to be successful and everyone's perfect, right? Everyone's life is great. And the truth is that's just not how it is, right? And it's regardless of your means, and it's regardless of your background, where you came from, who you are. There's no one here who doesn't have things that they can work on and better ways to take care. And I think if we kind of a bit more honest about that, and just embraced our humanity and the messiness and the bewilderingness, that's not really a word, of life, and focused on our resilience and our tolerance and our kindness, and we do quite a lot better.
Right.
Something really specific. I think in the 20 years, I've probably been a part of 8,000 to 10,000 cases of children, adolescents, and you have many different type of scenarios. Sometimes young men and women want to come into therapy. Sometimes you don't. Sometimes you can't get children or adolescents to come into therapy. The parents, I don't think, sometimes know. Making that call to whatever provider, whether MindSpring's, a private practice therapist, or anything, and just going in as parents, going in as a father, going in as a mother. You have very complex situations and family systems that you're dealing with. And so just sitting down with a therapist, maybe somebody that has had 20 years experience, 5 years experience, 10 years, and problem solving what your family is going through. I know at MindSprings, if we can help you with a therapist, a case manager, or find you a therapist somewhere around your home, we really just want to sit down, have a conversation. And if you're coming in for just parenting skills, what do we do when this happens? What do we do when this happens? What happens if this happens? That's the conversation where it starts, and hopefully you're creating that team, whether mom's coming in, dad's coming in, mom and mom's coming in, dad and dad's coming in, whatever it needs to be, but you're starting that conversation. I can tell you after those 5,000, 10,000 of those people that were invested and were coming in and having the conversation were so much more successful than thinking about it. I don't know if I can do it, getting arguments at home if I should do it or not. As parents, make that first step just to come in and speak to a therapist or somebody that can sit down and go through what you're going through. The listening and understanding, that's exactly where the first part needs to happen.
If you're a parent and you're sitting here thinking, my family has lots of challenges, I could really go see a therapist. Or if you're sitting here thinking to yourself, my family's doing really well, I don't need to see a therapist. You're both prime candidates. If things are going really well, go see a counselor. If things aren't going well, go see a counselor. Either way, you're role modeling that the family health is important, that communication is important, that seeking help is important, that being the best family and the best parent and the best child that you can be is important. I oftentimes have families come to me and say, we tried counseling, it didn't work, and I ask questions, and say, well, how many times did you try it? And they say, well, we went to this counselor once, and he was a real jerk, and so it didn't work for us. And so I say sometimes, have you ever been to a dentist that you didn't like, and then all of a sudden say, I'm never going to the dentist again because I did not like that dentist. Well, health is important, so we try another dentist, and we try another counselor, and we try another doctor. And so I think that's important too.
Great.
Is that when we really are mindful and thoughtful about how we're living each moment of our day, that we will first, before we interact with people, whether it's our children, our coworkers, our community, that we will regulate and make sure that we're not leaking pain onto other people, but serving each other in a way that we can hold each other up. I hope that we will reset when we need to and reclaim values that we believe in and find the time and the energy to slow down and turn down the flame. I hope that we will learn to heal and then remap how we live our lives in a way that is authentic and connected to what we want for our future, because things are working at an exponential rate and our kids' pressures are tremendous. It is different than when we grew up, and slowing down and having that time with them and reconnecting with people is more important than anything else. So I'm really grateful.
I just want to say something really quick is don't wait. Don't wait till tomorrow. If you need help today, seek the help today. Tomorrow may be too late. It's, to me, the hardest part of my job is when I have to tell a parent that, their lovely little kid has died. So do not wait. If you're a teen and you're struggling, please seek help. If you're a parent, it's okay not to be the best friend of your child. It's okay to just, be the parent. But don't wait until tomorrow, if you can do it today.
Well, thank you all very much. We still have about 3 minutes. I just wanted to say, it sounds like there's such a theme here. I often hear, we're in the mountains, we're self-sufficient, we can fix this on our own, we can do this. And clearly that mentality isn't working. And we need to realize as a community that it's okay to reach out for help, that it's actually, and being our weakness is actually our strength. By taking action on being vulnerable, reaching out for help has so many positive ramifications. Is there anything anybody else would like to add?
I would say really quickly, I meet with a lot of families who aren't comfortable talking about mental health. They don't know where to go with that, maybe because their parents didn't talk about it. And so what often works for my families is let someone else do the talking. And by that, I mean, there are some fantastic books out there that you can read with your son or with your daughter, and that lets the book do the talking, and where you can read a quick chapter together, put the book down and say, what do you think of that? How does this relate to our relationship? How does it relate to our relationship? There are books like, I Wish He'd Taught Me to Shave, or
That's good.
Furiously Happy. I mean, there are lots of books out there that talk specifically about family relationships and can spark good conversations about, son, is this relationship what you want out of it? Am I being the dad that you want? Am I doing? And then for the kid to say the same thing. And so to really be able to have those courageous conversations without, even if you're not comfortable bringing it up, and let books or let podcasts or let something else be the medium to do that.
That's an excellent suggestion.
Mm-hmm. Well, an organ. The brain is an organ, and whatever it needs is often found in medical and wellness. So I think to remove the stigma is huge, huge. Serve your brain, serve your spirit. So. Thank you.
I just want to remind you all that these folks are available for questions afterwards, and the prior panelists as well. Thanks so much for coming. And thank you, esteemed panelists, for sharing your wisdom with us.